Welcome to this tutorial series for ARP from Midicake. If you've not seen the earlier videos in this series, I'd recommend watching them first. In this video, we'll look at ARP's play mode and how you can connect to external devices and software. ARP has two main modes of operation: play mode for performance and set mode for parameter editing and sequence design. When in play mode, the note buttons will be green and the chord buttons yellow. Pressing the note buttons will start the sequence playing. The output depends on whether each arpeggiator is muted or set to follow. Changing the global octave using the up and down buttons shifts the root note of the sequence by 12 semitones for each step. The default is the middle octave or octave 3. The tempo knob sets the playback speed. The tempo range is 1 to 300 beats per minute. The chord or scale that the note buttons invoke when pressed depends on the chord selected via the chord buttons, but we'll look at that in the next video. While the note buttons offer a quick way to play the sequences, it is also possible to play ARP live using an external keyboard, pad controller or chord sequencer. When connecting a controller via USB or MIDI DIN, you must ensure that the MIDI channel that the controller is outputting matches the MIDI sync channel set via the menu. Press the Set button to enter Set mode. In this mode, the notes will be highlighted in blue. Then repeatedly press the Menu button until you see the MIDI sync channel option. Use the up-down buttons or the tempo knob to change the value and thereby select the desired channel. Press the Set button again to return to play mode. You can then play notes on the external device, and ARP will generate its sequences based on those notes. It is important to understand that ARP doesn't behave like a classic arpeggiator. It does not use the notes you input to determine the length and order of the sequence. Instead, ARP samples the notes and creates sequences that are based on its own parameters. There's a video where I explain this concept in detail. Check out the link at the top. Live play can be disabled completely via the menu. Press Set and then the Menu button until you see Live play on note input. This is handy if you want to set the chords, but not invoke the sound when you press buttons or keys on a keyboard. Live play is great for experimenting and exploring, but there's a much easier way to stay on the beat. We previously looked at the play and stop controls, but it's worth digging a little deeper. Play and stop do what you'd expect, and pressing stop twice is like a panic stop and will cease all notes. If you press play again while ARP is already playing, it will pause playback, but hold all the notes open, whereas pressing stop will play out the notes that are currently playing based on their individual gate lengths. Here, the gate of ARP 1 is set to 1 bar. Pressing stop will hold the note for the length of a bar before ending the note. Pressing play again while ARP is already playing will keep all active notes held until you press play again to resume, or you press stop. This can be used creatively during performances. ARP can of course operate as a standalone controller for your synthesizers, or VSTs, but it can also work in conjunction with other music devices, or digital audio workstations, thanks to MIDI transport messages and a common MIDI clock. ARP can act as the main controller or be controlled. Enter Set mode using the Set button, and press the Menu button to select MIDI control mode. Set the control mode to In, and ARP will respond to external start and stop messages, and will also tempo match to a running MIDI clock. Set the control mode to Out, and ARP will send start and stop messages, along with MIDI clock, to any device or software that is set up to receive them. It is also worth mentioning that ARP supports MIDI Thru. Using the menu button, in set mode, select MIDI Thru. When enabled, any MIDI messages that ARP receives from external devices will be passed on to any other device. One more thing about MIDI before we move on. ARP doesn't make any noises of its own. Instead, it outputs MIDI note data. The sounds you're hearing in this video are generated using virtual software instruments, or VSTs. The instrument that plays is set for the individual arpeggiator by pressing the MIDI Out button in set mode. Match the MIDI channel to the VST or synthesizer, and that instrument will play the notes created by ARP. Easy. That's it for this video. In the next, we'll look at chords and scales. Please hit like if you found this video helpful, and perhaps subscribe if you haven't already. If you have any views or questions, feel free to comment below, or message us via midicake.com. Cheers, see you in the next one.